John. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Cooper, the Member of Parliament for St. Albert, Edmonton. I'm the House sponsor of Bill S-217, known as Wynn's Law, in honor of the late Constable David Wynn. Bill S-217 was introduced in the Senate by Senator Runciman, who of course joins us here this morning. Wynn's Law seeks to close a fatal loophole in the criminal code, a loophole that cost Constable David Wynn his life when he was murdered by a career criminal out on bail, all because the extensive criminal history of the killer was not disclosed at the bail hearing. Wynn's Law seeks to close that loophole by simply requiring prosecutors to disclose the criminal history of accused persons seeking bail. Wynn's Law is common sense, and it can save lives. It almost certainly would have saved the life of Constable David Wynn. That's why Wynn's Law received the unanimous support of the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee. It's why Wynn's Law passed the Senate by an overwhelming margin with the support of Liberal and Conservative senators alike. Yet sadly, the Liberal government has decided to play politics and put politics and partisanship ahead of public safety. And frankly, that is just unacceptable. Fortunately, there still is time before Wynn's Law is voted on in the House at second reading. As a result, there is still time for enough Liberals to do the right thing, to put public safety first and pass Wynn's Law. Now, Wynn's Law has received tremendous support right across Canada, including from key stakeholders. That's why I'm very pleased to be joined this morning by Jonathan Denis, the former Minister of Justice and Attorney General, who was the minister at the time that Constable Wynn was murdered and helped oversee the provincial response following the killing of Constable Wynn, as well as John Muise, a 30-year veteran of the Toronto Police Service, a former member of the National Parole Board, and currently the director of a victims' rights advocacy group, Abuse Matters. So I will turn it over now to, Abuse Hurts. I knew I would mess that up. I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. My name is Jonathan Denis. I'm the former Minister of Justice and Solicitor General of Alberta from 2012 to 2015. Wynn's Law has an opportunity to put public safety ahead of partisanship. Literally the change of one word in our criminal code could save lives. In January 2015, the tragic death of Constable David Wynn at the Apex Casino in St. Albert moved many people, including myself. I've seen the video of his death. It is senseless death, and it still haunts me to this day. He was pursuing Sean Rain, who was out on bail at the time, notwithstanding dozens of criminal convictions, including some for very violent offenses and some for some weapons offenses. Rain's extensive criminal history was not brought to the attention of the Justice of the Peace presiding at the bail hearing where he had received bail. Following this tragedy, I ordered a review of Alberta's bail process as the Attorney General for the province at that time. The review was completed last year, and the review was involving matters exclusively for provincial jurisdiction. Wynn's Law complements the recommendations for provincial action. It would amend Section 518 sub 1C of the Criminal Code of Canada to provide that a prosecutor must lead evidence of a bail applicant's criminal history. I submit that this is a common sense approach to public safety and justice in Canada. It does not remove the discretion that judges and justices of the peace can use in granting bail, something that should be there. It simply means that judges and justices of the peace will have all relevant facts at hand when making these important decisions of whether or not to release an accused. Public safety is not a partisan issue. I urge all members of Parliament to vote for Bill S-217 on February 22nd. And I want to thank Member of Parliament Michael Cooper, as well as Senator Runciman, for their leadership on this particular issue. Thank you.
As MP Michael Cooper mentioned, my name is John Muise. I'm Director of Public Safety at Abuse Hurts. It was formerly known as the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. It's pretty clear to me that you don't make decisions. Somebody that spent 30 years as a police officer and 5 years at the Parole Board of Canada, making risk assessment decisions, that you don't make those decisions in the absence of a criminal record. Criminal record tells us what a person has done over time, and if somebody has a long and diverse and dense history like this criminal Sean Wren did, it's a very good predictor of future similar behavior. So if you're going to make a decision, whether as a police officer to decide what to write in a show cause, or as a parole board member to decide whether to give somebody release on a particular, whether it's day parole or full parole, or if you're a judge or a justice and you're making a decision about whether to release somebody into the community on a surety or not to release somebody, or what kind of conditions to release them on, you don't do them in the absence of a criminal record. It's, as Michael Cooper said in the House not too long ago at the start of second reading of this bill, this is a no-brainer, and it truly is. I think it's important to note that it doesn't cost a dime beyond provincial attorneys general sending a letter out to their crown prosecutors saying before it was discretionary to include a criminal record, now it's mandatory. Doesn't cost any money. The equipment is there. It's a keystroke away to get a criminal record. It's something that actually has been done for a long, long time. This just codifies it so that no prosecutor out there decides to do something quickly in the absence of this information. So there's quite frankly no legal reason that I can see for not passing this. As Jonathan Denis indicated, I mean, public safety should never be trumped by politics, and I'm at a loss to understand why this amendment can't be made. It's really ultimately changing one word from may to shall. It's time to get it done. If there are legal problems with the way the bill is written, and I don't believe there are, we can hammer that out at a committee, and I know certainly my organization and other organizations are happy to come and assist with that. And I offered the same in a letter to the Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould, and to other members of her party. So bottom line is David Wynn should not have died that day. He did. I would just ask that his life not be in vain, and I implore the Liberal government to allow this bill to pass at second reading and proceed to committee. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
No, thanks, John. My name's Bob Runciman, and I chair the Senate's Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee. Off the top, I have to echo what John said with respect to I am totally perplexed by the reaction of the government to Bill S-217. There's no downside to passing this bill. The bill merely enshrines what happens at most bail hearings every single day in courtrooms across this country. At the very least, why not allow it to go to committee? If the government has concerns, let them be tested during study at committee. And by refusing to do that, they are, for all intents and purposes, acknowledging that their arguments will not stand up to scrutiny. And it's not just the group here at the podium behind this bill. The Canadian Police Association is announcing today, as we stand here, that it supports the legislation, and they are the voice for 60,000 frontline police officers right across this country. And it's a widow, Shelley McInnes Wynn, and her 3 young children who no longer have a father who are behind this bill. And for Prime Minister Trudeau, who 2 weeks ago said he didn't know anything about Bill 217 after it went through Cabinet and the Liberal caucus, we know you like to take off your tie and roll up your sleeves to show Canadians you care. Well, this bill provides an opportunity to demonstrate that you really do care and that you really are listening to the people of Canada. This one word, clearly dangerous weakness in the criminal code, resulted in the death of a fine young police officer, and we call on the Prime Minister to close this loophole and close it quickly. Thank you.
So we'll now open it up to any questions. Yes.
Earlier you said that the government is playing politics. What do you mean by that?
I mean exactly what I said, that they're playing politics. They're putting politics ahead of public safety. They have come out against a common sense piece of legislation to close a loophole that would require the criminal history of an accused to be presented in court at a bail hearing. Such information is always relevant and material. And yet they've come out against this very straightforward, very simple bill to make this common sense change to the criminal code, and they have not provided any clear reason as to why they are against the bill. So it leads me to no other conclusion that they are playing politics and putting partisanship ahead of public safety, and that's why we're calling on the government to do the right thing and put public safety first by passing Wynn's law.
Why do you think they don't want to pass the bill? What's behind, playing politics? Can you get into some detail? Why wouldn't they pass the bill?
Well, you'd have to ask them why they wouldn't pass the bill. Certainly they haven't provided any clear reason. And look, this is not a partisan issue, and that was very clearly illustrated in the Senate when it received the unanimous support of the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee and received the support of every single Conservative and Liberal senator. It was only a handful of independents that voted against the bill. So it was very clear in the Senate that this achieved bipartisan support, and it's no wonder because it is a small but important common sense change to the criminal code. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Can you just tell us what you think the reason is?
Well, I have a theory on that, and it comes from a pretty good source within the government, that the minister, and I don't know if this applies broadly across in terms of the PMO, but the minister didn't want to do what was described to me as one-off changes to the criminal code, although she's gone and done that herself with respect to another issue. But this is again is a suspicion on my part that a number of backbenchers in the Liberal caucus have proposed changes to the criminal code, which could be described as one-offs, and they've declined to support them for whatever reasons, so that now having a conservative bill in front of them, it poses a dilemma in terms of allowing a conservative bill to go through despite its merits and despite the potential danger allowing the current situation to continue. They've made what I think Michael appropriately describes as a political decision.
It would seem to me that prosecutors, it would be in their best interest to, they currently have the ability to present this information, so never mind the politicians. Shouldn't the prosecutors just be doing this anyway, and why wouldn't they be doing it in some cases?
They do.
So why do we need to change the law if it would be in the interest of the Crown anyway?
That's quite correct that the disclosure does more often than not happen, and to me that shows all the more reason why we want to codify it in our criminal code to make sure it always does happen. People look at the statute of justice. A lady justice is blind. Let's make sure that Lady Justice hears exactly the full statistics and the full background of the accused before he or she is granted bail.
Can you quantify at all the percentage of cases where that does?
I don't have that available. I'm sorry.
How would you do that?
regrettably, we find out when somebody dies that it's happened. But I mean, ultimately, it's been a few years, but I've spent a lot of time in bail court. And anybody that happened to be in Toronto, it's a busy little jurisdiction. And I can tell you that the Crown Attorney comes in with, certainly in the bail courts that I've been in, they come in with a stack this high of little folders this big. How many bail hearings do we have this morning? Oh, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 40. These are professionals. They do their job well. Many of them are experienced. Some of them aren't because they're in bail court and starting out in there. So is it possible that sometimes that record doesn't go in, or they make a deal with the lawyer and the judge accepts it and that information doesn't get in there? You bet. I think it's kind of the same as when you rush your copy out. Sometimes you make a mistake and accidentally misspell a word because you're rushing. You misspell a word in your copy. It's no different. They've got 30 files, and everyone might not be treated the way it should be treated. And this just codifies what generally gets done, and it doesn't interfere with the justice's decision, with the justice's ability to make an independent decision. So let's just, let's close that loophole. Let's fix that crack.
Any other questions?
No more questions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.